The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched so high that Ambassador Jin-So Park could barely see the ceiling. Hundreds of alien species sat in circular tiers around a central platform where she now stood. Some had scales that glittered under the artificial lights. Others floated in containment fields, filled with strange gases. A few looked almost human, but their eyes held an ancient coldness that reminded Jinseo that Earth was the newcomer here. She took a breath and began her presentation. Holographic displays showed Earth's achievements over the past 50 years. Cities that now ran on clean energy. Medical advances that had doubled human lifespans. The peaceful unification of all nations under one planetary government. Art, music, and literature from 1,000 cultures, all thriving together. Humanity requests full membership in the Galactic Council, Jinseo said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. We have completed our probationary period. We have contributed to Council research projects and maintained peace within our system. We ask only for the same rights and respect granted to other member species. Silence filled the chamber. Then, from the highest tier, came a clicking sound that Jinseo's translator rendered as laughter. The Vekir counselor, an insectoid creature with crystal-like wings, rose from his seat. Amusing, the Vekir said. 50 years. And the children think they have grown up. More laughter echoed through the chamber. Humanity has existed as a unified species for barely a century. Some of us here have held our seats for longer than your entire industrial age. A reptilian Draenoth leaned forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the platform. Your territory consists of one star system. 1. We control hundreds. What could you possibly offer this council? Jinseo felt her jaw tighten, but she maintained her diplomatic smile. We offer fresh perspectives, enthusiasm, and enthusiasm? A Salathine, whose telepathic abilities were legendary, interrupted with what might have been amusement. Your minds are so cluttered with emotions and instincts, it is difficult to discern coherent thought beneath all that noise. The criticism continued, each species adding their own assessment of humanity's inadequacies. Too emotional, too aggressive, too young, too primitive. Jinseo stood on the platform and absorbed it all, her face a mask of professionalism. She had known this might happen, but the reality hurt more than she had imagined. Finally, the Vekir counselor raised a crystalline appendage for silence. The council has deliberated on humanity's request. We find that full membership would be premature. Humanity will retain observer status for another century. Jinseo's heart sank, but worse was coming. Furthermore, humanity will be assigned support duties to demonstrate their commitment to council operations. You will monitor the empty sectors of space that require no strategic oversight. You will catalog asteroids and debris fields. You will serve as custodial staff on council facilities. The Vekir paused. These tasks will help humanity learn humility and patience. The word custodial hung in the air like an insult. They were being assigned janitorial work. After 50 years of faithful service, humanity was being told to clean toilets and watch empty space. Jinseo wanted to rage, to demand fair treatment, to walk out and tell the council exactly what they could do with their assignments. But she had been chosen for this role because she knew when to fight and when to endure. Humanity accepts the council's decision, she said quietly. We will fulfill whatever duties are assigned to us. She saw surprise flicker across some alien faces. They had expected anger, perhaps even a dramatic exit. Her calm acceptance seemed to unsettle them more than any protest would have. The session ended, and Jinseo walked through corridors filled with other species delegations. She heard their whispers, their poorly concealed laughter. The Korath ambassador actually patted her shoulder with what might have been pity. Do not feel bad, human. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, you will be ready. Back in her quarters, Jinseo finally let her mask slip. She sat at her desk and activated a secure channel to Earth. Fleet Admiral Yoonji Han appeared on the screen, Her aged face creased with concern. They rejected us? Jinseo said simply. Observer status for another century. And they assigned us menial labor to teach us humility. She could not keep the bitterness from her voice. Admiral Han was silent for a long moment. Then she asked, "How did you respond?" I accepted. What else could I do? Walk away and prove them right about humanity being too emotional? You did well, the Admiral said. Now, I need you to listen carefully. The Council has made a mistake today. Not in rejecting our membership, but in underestimating what we will do with this rejection. Jinseo frowned. I don't understand. They are assigning us to observe empty space and work in their facilities. They think they are humiliating us. Admiral Han leaned forward. But they are giving us exactly what we need. Access, time, the chance to learn everything about them while they ignore us. Understanding began to dawn on Jinseo. You want us to use this. I want us to be patient. Let them think we are defeated. Let them believe we are content with our place. Meanwhile, every human, on every council station, will watch and learn. Every survey mission will gather intelligence. Every custodian will observe how their technology works. The Admiral's eyes were hard now. They treat us like children, like servants. Fine. We will play the role they have assigned us. And when the time comes, they will learn what happens when you underestimate humanity. Jinseo felt something shift inside her. The humiliation was still there, but now it was fuel rather than poison. How long? She asked. As long as it takes. 10 years. 50. A century if necessary. We have learned patience. Jinseo. That is one advantage of being young. We remember that progress takes time. After the call ended, Jinseo stood at her window and looked out at the massive station rotating slowly against the stars. Hundreds of species, thousands of years of civilization, all convinced of their superiority. They had no idea what was coming. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb adjusted his maintenance uniform and tried not to feel ridiculous. He had designed propulsion systems for Earth's most advanced warships. He had 3 doctoral degrees, and now he was carrying a toolbox through the corridors of Council Military Station 7, officially employed as a technical maintenance assistant. The Draenoth supervisor barely glanced at him as Marcus checked in for his shift. Sector 12 needs cleaning. Diagnostic station in Sector 18 is malfunctioning. Waste recycling in Sector 9 requires inspection. The reptilian's tone suggested these tasks were beneath even discussion. Understood, Marcus said, keeping his voice neutral and subservient. He started with the diagnostic station, as it gave him the best excuse to access council systems. While his hands performed the routine repair, his eyes cataloged everything. The diagnostic interface revealed details about council weapon systems, their energy consumption rates, their maintenance cycles. Marcus had a perfect memory, and every detail was being stored for later analysis. What he found was surprising. Council technology was advanced, but it was old. The Draenoth had been using the same weapons designs for 3 centuries. Why innovate when you were already dominant? But Marcus saw the weaknesses immediately. The energy conduits were vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses. The targeting systems relied on predictable algorithms. The armor was strong but brittle, optimized for their typical combat ranges. In another part of the galaxy, Dr. Hana Kim was having her own revelations. She worked as a data management specialist in the Council's central archives, a job that mainly involved filing reports that no one would ever read. But those reports contained everything about Council history, politics, and technology. Hana discovered that the Council's image of peaceful cooperation was largely fiction. Most current members had achieved their status through conquest or intimidation. The Vekir had systematically eliminated rival species in their region. The Draenoth had built their empire on the ashes of a dozen extinct civilizations. Even the peaceful Salathine had claimed their worlds by telepathically dominating indigenous populations. The Council was not a fellowship of enlightened species. It was a club of successful predators who had agreed to stop fighting each other. More importantly, Hana found records of previous applications for full membership. Species were routinely kept in probationary status for centuries, used for menial labor and dangerous exploration, then finally admitted once they had proven their value through service. It was a system designed to exploit newcomers. She sent her findings through encrypted channels back to Earth, where analysts were building a comprehensive picture of Council politics and vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Captain Dmitry Volkov was enjoying himself immensely. His survey missions took him to remote parts of Council space, officially cataloging asteroids and gas giants, but his ship was packed with experimental technology that Earth had been developing in secret. The stealth systems worked perfectly. Volkov could park his ship within 1,000 kilometers of Council military exercises and observe without detection. He watched their tactics, noted their formations, and identified their communication protocols. But more than that, he was testing human innovations that exceeded anything the Council possessed. The new faster-than-light drive that could make jumps twice as long as Council standards. The adaptive hull armor that reconfigured based on incoming threats. The AI-assisted targeting systems that could track hundreds of objects. Simultaneously, during one mission, Volkov encountered a Vecchir patrol that had detected an unidentified object on sensors but could not locate it. He listened to their confused communications as his ship sat invisible just 10 kilometers away. They eventually gave up and left, never knowing that a human vessel had been watching them the entire time. "This is almost too easy," Volkov's second officer said. "It is easy because they are arrogant," Volkov replied. "They think they know everything there is to know about space warfare. They have not fought a real war in 2 centuries. We are still learning, still innovating, because we have to be." Back on Earth, the intelligence was being compiled and analyzed. Military strategists studied every detail of Council strengths and weaknesses. Scientists reverse-engineered alien technology and found ways to improve it. Diplomats mapped the complex web of Council politics, identifying allies who might be sympathetic to humanity's cause. Admiral Hahn reviewed the reports with satisfaction. 10 years had passed since the humiliation at the Council chamber. In that time, humanity had learned more about the galaxy than the Council realized was possible. "They are specialized," she explained to Earth's leadership during a briefing. "The Vecchir excel at politics and manipulation, but they are physically fragile and avoid direct conflict. The Draenoth are powerful warriors, but they lack strategic creativity. They use the same tactics they have used for centuries. The Salathine are brilliant analysts, but they are so cautious that they struggle to make quick decisions." "And humanity?" the Prime Minister asked. "We adapt. That is our advantage. We can be diplomats when needed, warriors when necessary, and innovators always. We are not the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but we are the most flexible." The Admiral pulled up a star map showing growing tensions in Council space. More importantly, the Council is fracturing. Smaller species resent the dominance of the old powers. The Vecchir's arrogance has created enemies. And there are rumors of something beyond Council space. Something dangerous moving in the void. Number sign. Jinseo, attending the meeting via hologram from her Council station, nodded. "I hear the whispers. The Kresh Dominion. A hive mind species that assimilates other races. The Council is not taking the threat seriously. They will," Admiral Hahn said quietly, "and when they do, they will turn to whoever can help them. We need to be ready for that moment." Across human-occupied positions throughout Council space, the work continued. Marcus Webb cataloged weaknesses in every system he serviced. Hana Kim built detailed profiles of every Council species and their political positions. Volkov tested technologies and tactics in the empty spaces where no one was watching. They were custodians and observers, exactly as the Council had demanded. But they were also learning everything they needed to know to survive in a galaxy that did not yet respect them. The Council had assigned humanity these roles to teach them humility. Instead, humanity was learning how to lead. The first reports were fragmented and confused. A colony in Sector 9 had gone silent. Then 2 more, in Sector 12. Within days, the pattern became clear. Something was attacking Council territory, and it was moving fast. Jinseo stood in the Council chamber as panic spread through the assembled species. The Kresh Dominion had finally arrived, and they were everything the rumors had promised. Worse, actually, the Kresh were a hive mind species that did not negotiate or trade. They assimilated. Their bioships landed on worlds and released swarms that captured other beings, dragging them to conversion centers where Kresh biotechnology rewrote their genetics and absorbed them into the collective. Entire planets were transformed into Kresh breeding grounds within weeks. The holographic display showed 12 simultaneous invasion points across Council space. 30 colonies already fallen. Millions of beings dead or converted. The Council's response was exactly what Jinseo had expected after 10 years of observation. Chaos. The Vekir demanded diplomatic contact, insisting that all conflicts could be resolved through negotiation. They drafted eloquent messages to the Kresh, all of which went unanswered as more colonies burned. The Draenoth wanted immediate military response, but they refused to coordinate with species they considered inferior. 3 separate Draenoth fleets launched independent attacks on Kresh positions, each one operating without support from the others. The Kresh destroyed them systematically. The Salathine convened analysis committees to study Kresh tactics and biology. They produced detailed reports while taking no actual action. By the time their committees reached conclusions, the Kresh had advanced another 10 sectors. Smaller Council species panicked. Some withdrew their fleets to defend their home systems. Others sent desperate messages seeking individual peace with the Kresh. A few even began preparing to surrender. Jinseo watched it all with a growing sense of dread. The Council had the resources to stop this invasion. They had ships, weapons, and personnel. What they lacked was the ability to work together. "They are going to lose," she said during a secure call to Admiral Han. "Not because they are weak, but because each species only thinks of themselves. Then we have a decision to make." The Admiral replied. Her face looked older now, tired from the years of preparation. "Do we let them fall, or do we help? If the Council falls, the Kresh will eventually reach Earth," Jinseo said. "True, but there is another reason to help." Admiral Han leaned forward. "We have spent 10 years watching them treat us as servants. Now we have the chance to show them what we really are." The decision was made more urgent when news arrived that the Kresh had attacked Research Station 17. It was a human-operated facility in deep space, one of the observation posts humanity had been assigned. The station's small defensive systems had been overwhelmed quickly. 147 humans died in the attack. Earth's government met in emergency session. The debate was heated. Some argued for withdrawal, protecting humanity's own interests. Others demanded immediate retaliation, but the final decision was unanimous. Humanity would fight. Not because the Council deserved help, but because it was the right thing to do. When the Vekir sent their curt message ordering human vessels to reinforce Sector 14 in defensive positions only, Jinseo composed her response carefully. "Humanity will assist in repelling the Kresh invasion. However, we will engage using our own tactics and command structure. Human forces will coordinate with Council fleets, but will not place our personnel under species who have spent a decade treating them as servants. If the Council wants our help, they will respect our operational independence." The message caused shock throughout the Council. Several species protested that humanity was being insubordinate during a crisis. But the Vekir, desperate for any reinforcements, reluctantly agreed. What no one in the Council expected was the size of the force that emerged from Earth's system. The long-range sensors detected them first. Dozens of ships. Then hundreds. Sleek vessels with designs unlike anything in Council databases. They moved in perfect formation, their coordination suggesting a level of fleet integration that Council species had never achieved. Admiral Volkov, now commanding the human fleet, broadcast on open channels so the entire Council could hear. This is the Terran Defense Fleet. We are moving to engage Kresh forces in Sector 14. Any Council vessels that wish to coordinate with us should contact our tactical command. We fight to protect, not to conquer. All who stand against the Kresh are our allies today. On Council Station 1, a Vecure analyst stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. Where did they get those ships? Our intelligence said humanity had a small patrol force. Maybe 30 vessels. They have been building, his supervisor replied quietly. For 10 years, while we treated them as custodians, they have been preparing. Jinseo watched the fleet depart on her station's monitors. She felt pride mixed with sadness. Humanity was about to prove itself in blood and fire. Some of those ships would not return. Some of those crews, people she had trained with or served alongside, would die in the coming battles, but they were doing it anyway. Not because the Council had earned their sacrifice, but because humanity had chosen to be better than those who had humiliated them. The Kresh had made a fatal error. They had attacked a species that the galaxy had underestimated. Now, both the Kresh and the Council were about to learn what humanity could do when pushed to fight. In the Council chamber, as news spread of the human fleet's size and capabilities, the conversation changed. Species that had mocked humanity now watched nervously. The Draenoth, who prided themselves on military might, were quietly recalculating their assessments. The Salathine, who had dismissed human minds as too chaotic, were suddenly very interested in studying human tactical doctrine. And the Vekir, from their protected homeworld, finally understood their mistake. They had given humanity a decade of access to Council technology and tactics. They had assigned humans to positions throughout Council space where they could observe everything. They had treated humanity as beneath notice. Now, as the human fleet accelerated toward the first major engagement with the Kresh, the Vekir realized that humanity had never been defeated by the Council's rejection. They had been preparing for exactly this moment. The war was about to truly begin, and humanity was no longer asking for respect. They were about to earn it. The Battle of Taraxis Station lasted 16 hours and changed everything. Admiral Volkov brought the human fleet into Sector 14 to find chaos. 3 Council fleets were engaged with Kresh bioships, but they fought as separate entities. The Draenoth focused on frontal assaults, taking heavy casualties. A Salathine defensive formation was slowly being encircled. A mixed fleet of smaller species was in full retreat. Typical, Volkov muttered. Tactical command, begin coordination protocols. Communications, open channels to all Council vessels. It is time to show them how this is done. The human ships moved with precision that shocked the Council observers. They did not charge forward or hang back defensively. Instead, they flowed through the battlefield like water, adapting to every situation. A squadron of human frigates screened the retreating smaller species, covering their withdrawal with precise defensive fire. Human cruisers positioned themselves to support the Draenoth assault, using long-range weapons to thin out Kresh forces before the reptilians crashed into them. Human electronic warfare ships disrupted the Kresh hive mind communications, causing confusion in their usually perfect coordination. But the most important thing humanity did was talk. Draenoth Fleet Commander, this is Volkov. Your frontal assault is succeeding, but you have Kresh reinforcements approaching from your port side. Adjusting 2 of our squadrons to intercept. Continue your attack. Salathine Collective. Human Tactical suggests a fighting withdrawal to coordinates we are transmitting. We will cover your movement and establish a new defensive line that supports both your position and ours. Korath vessels, we see you are low on ammunition. Human supply ships are moving to your position. Hold your current location for 8 more minutes. For the first time in the battle, Someone was looking at the entire situation and coordinating a unified response. The council species, accustomed to fighting alone, found themselves part of something larger. Marcus Webb, now serving on the engineering vessel Persistence, led damage control teams that did the impossible. When a Draenoth dreadnought took critical hits and began venting atmosphere, the Persistence maneuvered alongside mid-battle. Human engineers in hardened suits crossed the gap and worked to seal the breaches. "This is insane," the Draenoth captain growled over the comm. "You will get yourselves killed helping us." "Probably," Marcus replied cheerfully as he welded a support beam into place while explosions flared around them. "But you are our allies, and allies do not abandon each other. Now shut up and let us work." The repairs held. The dreadnought stayed in the fight. And the Draenoth captain, who had laughed at humanity's council presentation 10 years ago, was silent with something that might have been shame. On the station itself, the battle was even more personal. Kresh boarding swarms had penetrated the outer hull, hunting for victims to convert. Human Marines met them in the corridors. Lieutenant Jiwoo Song led her squad with calculated aggression. The Kresh were terrifying opponents, bioengineered for combat. But humans had prepared for this. They used tactics that confused the hive mind, splitting up and attacking from unexpected angles. They set traps using Kresh predictability against them. They adapted to each new Kresh variant within minutes of encountering it. But more importantly, they protected others. When Salathine civilians were trapped in a sealed section, Jiwoo's squad fought through 3 decks of Kresh swarms to reach them. When a Vekir diplomat panicked and froze during an evacuation, a human private named Chen physically carried him to safety while under fire. "Why do you help us?" the Vekir asked later, his translator struggling with his shocked emotional state. "We treated your people so poorly." Chen just shrugged. "Because it is the right thing to do. That is reason enough." Above the station, the space battle reached its climax. The Kresh had committed their command ship, a massive bio-vessel that coordinated the entire invasion force. Dr. Hana Kim, serving as intelligence officer on Volkov's flagship, identified it from its communication patterns. "That is the key," she told the admiral. "Destroy that ship, and the rest of their fleet will lose coordination. The hive mind will fracture. Then we go after it," Volkov said. He opened fleet-wide communications. "All vessels. This is Admiral Volkov. We have identified the enemy command ship. Human Third Fleet will make the assault run. We need everyone else to keep the rest of the Kresh occupied. Trust us. We know what we are doing." 47. It was a insane plan. The command ship was protected by hundreds of Kresh vessels. Any conventional assault would be suicide. But the human fleet did not do conventional. They used their superior stealth technology to approach undetected. They used electronic warfare to blind Kresh sensors at critical moments. They used their adaptive tactics to exploit weaknesses in Kresh formations that the rigid hive mind could not adjust for quickly enough. The assault was brutal. Human ships took heavy damage. The destroyer, Indomitable, was crippled but kept firing with its remaining weapons. The cruiser, Resolution, rammed a Kresh bioship that was about to destroy a Salathine medical vessel, sacrificing itself to save hundreds. But the humans reached the command ship. Missiles and energy weapons struck its vulnerable command nodes. The massive vessel shuddered, its biosystems failing. Within minutes, it was dead in space. The effect was immediate. The Kresh fleet lost its perfect coordination. Individual ships began operating independently, making mistakes and poor decisions. The Council fleets, now working together under human coordination, pressed their advantage. The Kresh began to retreat. It was not a total victory. The Kresh were not defeated, just pushed back from this sector. They would regroup and attack elsewhere. But for the first time since the invasion began, The Council had won a major engagement. As the human fleet regrouped, damage reports came in. 23 ships destroyed. 4,000 personnel dead or wounded. For a single battle, the casualties were severe, but the entire Council had watched. They had seen human ships sacrifice themselves to protect aliens who had dismissed them. They had seen human courage and skill and compassion under fire. They had seen humanity choose to fight not for glory or conquest, but to protect others. Jin Seo received a private communication from the Vekir High Counselor himself. The proud insectoid's voice was quiet and subdued. "We owe humanity a debt. We did not believe you were capable of this." "We were always capable," Jin Seo replied. "You just chose not to see it." The war was far from over, but the galaxy's perception of humanity had changed forever. They were no longer the young species to be dismissed. They were the ones who fought for others, who adapted to anything, who never gave up. They were the ones who would lead the Council to victory, whether the Council realized it yet or not. The war against the Kresh lasted 2 more years. 2 years of battles across dozens of sectors, of victories and defeats, of sacrifices and courage. And throughout it all, humanity led. Not through conquest or domination, but through example. Human tacticians taught Council species how to coordinate their efforts. Human engineers shared their technology freely. Human diplomats mediated disputes between species who had never trusted each other. Human medical teams treated wounded from all species without discrimination. The galaxy watched and learned. The final confrontation came at Nexus Prime, a strategic system that controlled access to 3 major sectors. The Kresh threw everything they had at the combined fleet. It was the largest space battle in Council history. Admiral Volkov, now recognized as the Supreme Commander of Council forces, orchestrated a defense that used every species' strengths. Draenoth ships formed the heavy assault wings. Salathine vessels provided long-range fire support and analysis. Smaller species operated in coordinated strike groups. And human ships moved throughout the formation, adapting to wherever they were needed most. The fighting was desperate. The Kresh were making their final push, knowing that defeat here would end their invasion. They fought with suicidal determination, their bioships ramming Council vessels. When weapons ran dry, in the midst of the chaos, a Kresh heavy cruiser broke through the defensive line. Its target was a refugee convoy evacuating Vekir civilians, including families with young offspring. The destroyer, Defiant, one of the smallest human vessels in the battle, saw the threat. Its captain, Ji Woo Song, did not hesitate. She ordered her ship to intercept, placing the Defiant directly between the Kresh cruiser and the convoy. "All weapons. Fire everything we have," Song commanded. "Engineering. Divert all power to forward shields. We hold this line." The Defiant was massively outgunned. Its weapons barely scratched the cruiser's hull. But it bought time. Precious seconds for the convoy to escape and for reinforcements to arrive. Song opened a general broadcast as her ship took hit after hit. "This is Captain Jiwoo, Song of the Terran Destroyer. Defiant. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is what humanity is. That is what we will always be." The Defiant exploded in a flash of white light. But the convoy escaped. 300 Vekir civilians, including 70 young offspring, survived because one human captain chose to sacrifice herself and her crew. The moment was recorded, transmitted, watched by billions across the galaxy. When the battle finally ended hours later, with the Kresh in full retreat, there was no celebration. The losses had been too great. Too many ships destroyed. Too many lives ended. But the Kresh invasion was broken. They retreated to their home territory and requested negotiations. The unstoppable assimilation machine had been stopped by species they thought were weak and divided. In the aftermath, the Council faced a choice. The human fleet was damaged but still powerful. Humanity had proven itself in battle. They could demand anything now. Territory, resources, power. Admiral Han, attending the council session via hologram, stood before the assembled species and surprised them again. Humanity requests no territorial gains. No reparations. No special privileges. She paused, letting that sink in. However, we do have demands regarding the creche. The council waited nervously. The Draenoth expected humanity to demand the creche be exterminated. The Vekir feared humanity would claim creche territory. The Salathine calculated various power-sharing arrangements. We demand a negotiated peace, Han said. The creche will retain their core worlds. They will cease all assimilation activities and open diplomatic channels. They will pay reparations to the species they harmed, but they will not be destroyed. The chamber erupted. Multiple species protested. The creche had killed millions. They had destroyed hundreds of worlds. They deserved obliteration. Jinseo stood and spoke for the first time in 2 years. We were judged by this council as too primitive, too emotional, too young to deserve respect. You treated us as servants and custodians. Some of you laughed at us. Her voice was calm but carried to every corner of the chamber. We could have withdrawn when the creche came. We could have let you fall and claimed the territory afterward. We could have demanded payment for our help. She looked around at the assembled species. We did none of those things. We fought because it was right. We sacrificed because we believe in protecting others. And now we say that the creche deserve mercy because we refuse to become what hurt us. We will not turn our pain into cruelty. That is not who humanity is. The silence that followed was absolute. The Vekir High Counselor stood slowly. You shame us, he said quietly. All of us. You showed us what civilization truly means. It is not about technology or territory or age. It is about choosing to be better than your pain demands. Over the following months, the council restructured itself, not because humanity demanded it, but because humanity had revealed how broken the old system was. Smaller species found their voices heard. The rigid hierarchy dissolved. Decisions were made by consensus rather than domination. Humanity was granted full council membership. But more than that, they were asked to help redesign the entire system to be more equitable. Marcus Webb led an engineering coalition that shared technology across all species. Dr. Hana Kim established educational programs where young beings from dozens of species learned together. Admiral Volkov trained the next generation of military officers in human tactical philosophy and the ethics of warfare. A monument was built in orbit around Council Station 1. It bore the names of all who died fighting the creche, with Ji Woo Song's name at the center, surrounded by the names of her crew. Beneath it, an inscription in every council language. They stood between the innocent and harm. They chose sacrifice over survival. They showed us the meaning of courage. Jin Seo retired after seeing humanity's place in the galaxy secure. She returned to Earth and lived quietly, refusing interviews and honors. But on the day she died, decades later, the entire council observed a moment of silence. Humanity's grandmother, they called her. The woman who taught the galaxy that strength without compassion was tyranny. Her grandson, Min Jun Park, followed in her footsteps. He joined the new Integrated Council Defense Force, serving on a ship with a crew from 8 different species. His commanding officer was Vekir. On his first day, the commander took him aside. Your grandmother changed the galaxy. She faced humiliation with dignity and answered cruelty with grace. She taught us that true strength lies not in dominating others, but in uplifting them. She showed us that the newest voice in the room might have the most important things to say. Minjun looked at the stars through the viewport, thinking of all who came before. The ones who endured humiliation and chose patience. The ones who fought to protect rather than conquer. The ones who believed that being underestimated was an opportunity, not an insult. They treated humanity like we were nothing, he said quietly. So we showed them what nothing could become. The commander's translator rendered what might have been a smile, and in doing so, you became everything. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.